Something happened in Ottawa yesterday that almost every major outlet missed. And once you see how three separate events connect, the entire story between Canada and the United States looks completely different from what you have been told. The United States ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, was scheduled to speak at a major conference in the Canadian capital. 1 hour before he was supposed to walk on stage, organizers received word that he had been called back to Washington for urgent meetings. No explanation. No rescheduled date. He was simply gone. At almost the exact same moment, a federal court struck down Trump's global tariff strategy, removing the single most powerful economic weapon Washington had been using against Canada for over a year. And while those two things were happening simultaneously, Mark Carney was standing in Mirabel, Quebec, signing the largest aircraft order in Canadian history with one of Asia's most powerful airlines. 3 events. 1 hour, zero coincidence. If you want to understand what is actually happening between these two countries right now, stay with us. Because what comes next changes everything you thought you knew about who holds the leverage in this relationship. Here is what almost nobody is saying out loud. The entire American pressure strategy rested on a single assumption, that Canada had nowhere else to go, that if Washington applied enough economic pain, Ottawa would eventually come crawling back to the table on American terms. That assumption is now collapsing in real time, and the investment numbers are the proof. Foreign direct investment into Canada is running at its highest level in nearly 2 decades. On a per capita basis, it is moving at twice the rate of Canada's nearest G7 competitor. Non-American exports are rising sharply and are projected to double within this decade. 20 separate economic agreements have been finalized across 5 continents in less than 12 months. A $1 trillion investment pipeline is already moving. Canada did not wait for Washington's permission. It found other options, and those options are now producing measurable, documented results that officials in Washington can no longer dismiss or ignore. If you are following this story and want daily updates as this situation develops, drop the word Canada in the comments right now. It helps us know exactly who wants more of this coverage. Carney laid out his position with surgical precision. He said Canada remains open to deeper integration with the United States, including a Fortress North America model in selected sectors. Those offers, he confirmed, are still on the table. But then came the sentence that reframed the entire negotiation. He said, if that route is not ultimately possible, Canada will invest heavily in new markets, new products, and new partnerships abroad. That word "if" is carrying enormous weight, because what followed was not a warning about what Canada might do someday. It was a description of what Canada is already doing right now. New markets are not being planned. They are being built. New partnerships are not being discussed. They are being signed. Buy Canadian and build Canadian policies are not campaign promises. They are already generating momentum on the ground. This is not a bluff. This is negotiating from a position of documented, verifiable strength. And that distinction is exactly why Hoekstra's sudden departure from Ottawa matters as much as it does. Washington's theory was straightforward. Sustained economic pressure would eventually erode Canadian political will, and Ottawa would return to the table weakened and ready to accept unfavorable terms. The theory assumed that the security relationship through NORAD created a natural ceiling on how far Canada could realistically push back. What nobody in Washington fully anticipated was that the pressure would produce the opposite result. Instead of weakening Canada's position, it accelerated decisions that many economists and analysts believe should have been made decades ago. Canada began meeting its full NATO spending commitments, removing one of Washington's most consistent criticisms and one of its most reliable leverage points. Canada became the only non-European country invited into the European Union's Defense Procurement Initiative, opening strategic channels that had never previously existed. Relationships with Nordic countries expanded, creating security partnerships no longer exclusively tied to a single ally. The ceiling that was supposed to contain Canada's response quietly disappeared. And now, $500 billion in defense and resilience investment is being prepared. A new sovereign wealth structure is being built to give Canadians direct ownership stakes in the infrastructure rising across the country. The strategy that was designed to push Canada into submission may have instead produced a Canada that is more economically independent, more globally connected, and more strategically autonomous than at any point in recent history. Carney himself put it in terms that are difficult to misread. He said Canada cannot respond to these challenges by becoming timid imitations of others, or by trying to rebuild an old order that is simply not returning. He said Canada used to build big things, and it is preparing to build again. Big, fast, bold. Those three words are now becoming the actual operating description of Canadian policy, not just political language for speeches. And that is precisely what appears to have unsettled Washington most, because governments do not recall ambassadors hours before scheduled public appearances when everything is going according to plan. They call them home when the plan is no longer matching the reality on the ground. They call them home when a strategy built on assumptions starts colliding with facts that those assumptions never accounted for. Officials in Washington are now looking at 20 trade agreements, record investment figures, defense commitments, and an Asian airline deal, and realizing that the window they believed they had, the window where Canada could be pressured on favorable terms, may be closing significantly faster than anyone inside the White House originally calculated. Fortune favors the bold. And right now, the boldest moves in this relationship are not coming from Washington. They are coming from Ottawa. Agreement by agreement, investment by investment, partner by partner, and continent by continent. Canada is not waiting for anyone's permission to build its future. The transformation is already underway, and the story is moving fast. We track this daily, so if you want to stay ahead of what the mainstream is not telling you, make sure you are subscribed, because tomorrow's update may be the most important one yet.